What do we want? Save our school!
So we're here at the gates of All Saints Primary School in Freshwater. We're about to go into the school building for a public meeting with the officers from Hampshire County Council who are proposing to close the school. And we are here to ask questions and see what we can do to save our school.
Are we relaxed now? No. You're still a very new. You're gonna look nice.
Yeah.
Right, I think we're walking on now. Are we marching?
Yeah.
Are we going behind this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Right, there you go. Behind the banner. Yeah.
Lights up. Wait, it's
Can you show me your sign, please? Okay. So what does it say?
Our school is where we belong.
I like it. It's got a love heart in it. Keep cool
Save us.
and save our school.
Cool.
Okay.
Flying away.
Okay.
Sorry, Mum, coming.
So walking up the school driveway through the trees. Going past the secret garden where the children are learning to plant vegetables. Past the war memorial that the children made. We're walking up towards the oldest part of the school, built in 1875. There's the preschool on the right, that's rated by Ofsted as outstanding. This stone building is the original school.
Of course, I've missed you. Hello.
We believe this dates from about 1875. It's the second site of the school after it moved from Mower Place, established in 1715.
I'll go and look for next door.
No, sweetheart. No, there's a car coming. Yeah. You're not stopping outside.
Save our school! Don't be a fool! Save our school! Save your space.
Come with me, Molly.
Fine, we'll.
SOS, save our school. Just do it.
Obviously I've got my own question, and I've also got Councillor Cameron, who can't be here this evening. He's asked me to quote something for him. So I'm facilitating.
I'm just going through the IT suite.
And there's more at the other hall as well.
From the corridor into part of the old school.
It's going to be a nightmare.
It's going to walk through into the more modern part of the school with the sports hall is.
Okay.
I think it's a point, so it's a representative.
Okay. Yes. Fine, sure.
There's lots of parents in.
Surprisingly difficult to do with
I'm very keen to start as we advertised at 6 o'clock. You met me on the way in. My name's Mark, I'm from Children's Services. I've not had a role in this process until today. And my role today is to facilitate the meeting. And in doing so, my goal is to make sure that if you want to say something, that you have an opportunity to say it, and that everybody else can hear you, and that eventually you have an opportunity to ask direct questions. Now, there may be, during the course of the first session, there may be some questions that you have that have been answered, and I would hope that perhaps you don't repeat them. There is a 20-minute presentation. It would be really helpful if it wasn't interrupted, otherwise it's going to then become a much longer presentation. So if you wouldn't mind sitting tight, I know that there's a strong feeling in the room, and that's probably an understatement, but there is a presentation from the people that I'll introduce at the front in a moment. There's no single way of doing this, but then what I want to do is to give you an opportunity to stand up, not specifically to ask a direct question, perhaps there's something that you want to say, and if you put your name on the list, I will be going down the list. If you feel you want to say something but your name is not on the list, that's perfectly fine. You can then put your hand up and we'll come to you in the end. I've nominally got about 40 minutes set aside for that. So at about 7 o'clock, we'll then go into a question and answer session. It will be your opportunity to ask direct questions of the group that are here tonight. We're not expecting any fire drills. That's the fire exit should you need it. The toilets, I believe you've probably already passed them or you know where they are.
There's also a legislative as well.
Thank you. So 2 fire exits from here, and then we will gather on the playground. Please, when you leave at the end, don't go out of the fire exit that's just in the hallway there. Please go back out of the main entrance.
Just to check that this is a formal meeting and therefore all the views that are given tonight are being recorded as part of the
Just coming
consultation.
to that at the moment. And the caller here is Helen, who is making a note of what's been said this evening, and they will form minutes which will be published on the consultation website. So we've started promptly. We are intending to finish promptly at 8 o'clock. So forgive me if in the run up to 8 o'clock I make my presence known a little bit more, and then we'll finish at 8. And before I introduce, clearly with a group of this size, there is a propensity for people to want to shout out, want to make their points raised and heard. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'm hoping that you get your chance to say what you need to say in the format that I've described. So, the introductions. The first gentleman with the red tie is Martin Goff. Richard is sat at this end, Richard Vaughan from Children's Services. Natalie, who's just waved. I'm Mark Saunders, and we've also got Rob Saunders from the diocese, who's not on the screen but is here tonight as well. Okay, so we're going to go into the presentation now for about approximately 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Just to be clear, what we will do is we'll make sure those slides are available on the website, so don't worry about trying to take pictures of a copy of them, or we'll make sure they all go up with the minutes as soon as we can. I'll stand here and hope that gives you enough amplification to hear what I'm saying. So what I thought would be useful for me in the first instance is to just run through the process, so everyone is clear and understanding of where we are and where we've got to get. So you will be aware that there was a report that went on the Council Forward Plan. That report was drafted in discussion with Councillor Brading, who's the Cabinet Member for Children's Services. We We published that report in February, and that report gave us authority simply to consult. It just says we can come out and talk to the people about the proposal. Doesn't take any other decisions than that, just we can start a consultation. This initial consultation will be for 6 weeks. You can see it closes on the 15th of April. As far as school organisation goes, we don't actually need to do that 6-week consultation. You could go straight to the second phase, but our view is that that would be irresponsible and a silly thing to do. We need to consult fully. We need to absolutely understand everyone's views, so we can then take them away and report back to Councillor Brady. So we're in that initial consultation phase. At the end of that phase, we have to produce a report that summarises everything that we collected during the consultation phase. Okay? So we will produce a report that will go into the public domain, that will set out all the findings from the consultation and include some recommendations. That will go back to Councillor Brady in late May, might be early June, depends on timing. And subject to Councillor Brady taking a decision at that point, we would enter a period of statutory consultation, which is a 4-week period that basically gives everyone another opportunity to comment on the recommendations that are made in the report. So, for example, if we decided to close School A, and that's what was in the report that we published notices about, people can come back with us with more concerns and more questions about that specific recommendation. At the end of that period, we have to take another report summarising what's gone on during that public notice period. We have to summarise that, and we have to take that back to Councillor Brady again to make a decision. So there's sort of 3 reports throughout the process. As it stands, they are decisions for Councillor Brady to take, because that's the way the governance of the council works. He could choose to discuss it with Cabinet and get a Cabinet decision, but he doesn't have to. That's the same in Hampshire, same in most authorities now. Decisions are taken by a singular individual for the best part. If we took a final decision in June or July, and it was the closure of All Saints, we would seek to implement that for September 2019. If at some point we change direction following the consultation, it's quite likely what you'd have to do is start the process again. So if we concluded actually that's the wrong decision, there's another decision we should take, we would almost certainly have to start the 6-week and the 4-week period again to consult on the changed recommendation. Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin Gold, as I said earlier, Head of Information, Homeschool Transport and School Admissions. The thing we wanted to take you through here is a set of information that we have known about, I suppose, since a bit less than 12 months ago, and we first began the conversation about this set of information as it was coming to light with what is called the Isle of Wight Schools Forum, which is a group, is a schools body that has its focus on schools funding and how schools funding is going to work going forward. And then from having had that conversation, we took it out and we began to talk to the head teacher conferences. We'd already alerted elected members. So it's an information set that has long been produced, and probably before the partnership between the Isle of Wight Council and the Hampshire County Council began, a version of this was in existence, and certainly since the partnership began on 1st of July 2013, we've been looking at this data over time to try and get a sense of what's to come in the school system. Now, the data set that we're presenting for you there starts in 2014-15, and what's important to us when we're planning school places for this conversation, but actually for any conversation about school place planning, is that number of 4-year-olds that come into the system, the children who start in reception classes on the island, and how many are there compared to the number of places. We have a statutory duty to supply enough school places And we also are, in effect, got a similar duty to not have too many places. But when we have too many places, if we haven't got enough school places, you can imagine the outcry. But if you've got too many school places, it plays out slightly differently in the conversation with the Department for Education, because what they know is I'll call it an inefficiency in the system, because maintaining all those school places when you don't need them all, in effect, costs money, and therefore it's not being spent on the education of the children in the system. So what you can see there is this thing that we're tracking in, in County Hall, and there was typically 1,400 or so children coming in through as 4-year-olds wanting to join the school system. That's a data set. I can't say for certain it is 100% accurate because I don't have access to all children's records, but we collect this in a legitimate data sharing agreement with the health authority, and they tell us these are the children registered with GPs, and they give us enough information. They don't tell us their names, but they give us enough information for us to be able to locate where they live. So that's very helpful, just thinking, okay, is this demand going to be in Sandown? Is it going to be in Newport? Is it going to be on the West White? 1,400 children, typically, as you can see there, 1,300 children joining the school system, and that was in itself giving us a level of surplus of around about 15%, 14 to 15% in terms of Year R places. So we had too many Year R places already across all of the island schools. I'm not talking about West White, all of the island schools. When we get into 2021 and 2022, sorry, 2020, 21, 22, what we have there is 200 fewer children in that data set of children we think are coming in through as 4-year-olds. We've collected that from the NHS. We've also had that confirmed by the Office of National Statistics, who do these pieces of work countrywide, so they project for the number of 4-year-olds as well. So there's a really significant concern for us in a conversation with, I call it the whole school system, which is 200 fewer children. If that plays out for 7 years, that's 1,400 fewer children in the whole of the primary phase. We'll say there's about £3,000 attached to every child that comes into the system, and that's how much money comes out of the overall school system in the event of that dropping the birth rate, dropping the number of 4-year-olds, however you want to put it. It's fewer primary age children, and that's a great concern for us. It can impact on standards because the money's being spread out in a way that makes it slightly inefficient. There are strengths and weaknesses to smaller schools, and it can be quite difficult when a smaller school is struggling to get it out of that. We're looking at this in the context of what else might be happening on the Isle of Wight, and we know that there's an Isle of Wight regeneration strategy, and we know it's talking about potentially 8,000 homes across the island, but the delivery timescale for that is really quite slow. And in our time being involved, coming from Hampshire, working and taking on a role on the Isle of Wight, what we have found is that when new houses are built, it isn't bringing a large net additional number of families and children into the area. It almost creates a move around the island rather than that additional that increase in the number of children and families. What we use as a rule of thumb, and this is based on years and years of looking at this stuff, and not us doing that, this is a countrywide and demographers doing it, round about 700 homes delivers a form of entry of primary provision. So if 700 homes are being built, more or less all in one place, and there is a mixed type and tenure, so some 2 beds, some 3 beds and so on, you end up with this situation where another form of entry may be coming into the area. I'm just sharing that with you because I'm sure you've had thoughts and may have questions about it, and that's just sort of the starting point. Do feel free to ask questions on it. Moving on and wanting to talk about the more local area, it's helpful for us, and we have to do it anyway because the Department for Education wants it, to not think of the island as one single group of schools, but to split it up into what are being called school place planning areas. And through looking at the information that we've got about where children live and where they go to school, we've created something that we call the West White Planning Area. We're not saying that, we're not trying to suggest that all children living on the West White will always go to school on the West White. It's just sensible to group the schools together. And of course, there's some children from Newport who could be travelling in any direction, and some children on the West White could be going to Cowes, or they could be going to Newport, or anywhere, in fact, for any particular reason. So we're not restricting pupil movement. We're just trying to plan school places in a way that brings those numbers together. And what we can see is there's 119 school places as we speak for reception-age children joining the 5 schools that are in our West White Planning Area. And the number of children that live in the West White, based on that national health data set that I mentioned, children registered at GP practices, are those numbers shown across the bottom there, starting in the 90s, and then when we get into that phase that I wanted to particularly highlight of when we've got fewer children across the whole of the island, you can see the numbers are dropping into the 60s. Now, we're talking 2 and 3 years away for the Isle of Wight, and you can also see that in 2020 the drop is not as marked in the Isle of Wight as it is in the wider island picture, and that's just how these things work. We can't tell families where to live, we can't tell them when to have children or anything like that. So we're just following things that are going on. And of course it's possible that families would move into the area over that time. But based on what we know now, and mapping this historically and projecting it forward in a time and trusted methodology, what I would say to you is there's 4 forms of entry worth of places, because a form of entry is 30 children in a class is defined in infant class size legislation. 4 forms of entry worth of places. We've only ever had 3 forms of entry living in the area, so that was always going to create a level of surplus. And then the numbers drop to much closer to 2 forms of entry as I project into the future. And so having as many places as we've got now going forward is problematic, and problematic for the reasons that I said earlier. We say, based on historic trends, you can only use what's happened in the past to project into the future in the methodology. The 2 schools that are likely to see the greatest level of surplus are All Saints and Brighton. That's just copying the trends of recruitment that have happened up till now. And just mentioning my final bullet from the previous slide again, it's just, of those 8,000 homes that I mentioned as part of the regeneration strategy, there is the prospect of 560 units by 2034. Using that mixed type of tenure thing that I mentioned, and roughly 210 children in 700 houses, we'd expect that to be 160 to 170 primary age children in the standard methodology. But at the moment, we've not been able to map that happening in the Isle of Wight's new housing developments. Just mentioning the West White numbers and the school capacities so that you've got it as part of the record. You can see there that the published admission number is the Colin Hall plan. That has a legal status, and if you've got that many children applying for school places, I'll be coming on to this in a future slide, then you must admit them into year R, and so you probably know all of this far better than me. Those are the admission numbers for the schools on the West White. The total school capacity takes the number of year groups and multiplies it by number of year groups, which is 7, times the school capacity, the PAN, and then you get the school capacity. And we're giving you the ideas of where the surplus places are based on a recent census headcount. I think that lets me invite Natalie to speak.
As School Improvement Manager of the Isle of Wight, my job is to talk to you about the standards in the schools, and the most public-facing way of looking at that is to look at how Ofsted, whose job it is to judge schools, places schools in the West Wight. Charlesfleet was recently inspected by Ofsted and maintained its good judgment. All of these documents are available. If you type into Google Ofsted and the school's name, the documents come up. St Saviour's very, very recently Ofsteded and achieved good, which it was a maintained good because it was good before. And Yarmouth in 2017 was given a good judgment. Brightstone and All Saints have had a trickier time. Brightstone has now had 2 successive requires improvement judgments. The most recent of those was in 2018. The inspector was very clear when she inspected the school that she saw things that were improving, and the first bullet point of the report says that leaders have stopped the decline in standards and outcomes are beginning to improve, but it wasn't judged at that time to be good because the outcomes were not yet in line with other schools nationally. So they noted an improvement, but it wasn't good enough to be good. So they settled on the requires improvement judgment. Brightstone is due a monitoring visit in 2019, but it has not yet had that. All Saints was inspected in 2017 and it achieved a requires improvement judgment again. The requires improvement judgment was the 3rd in a row of Section 5 judgments, and it was subject to a monitoring visit in 2018. And in the monitoring visit, which is the most recent thing that you'll find on the website, everything that I'm quoting here is the most recent thing that you'll find on the Ofsted website, noted that senior leaders and governors are not taking effective action to tackle the areas requiring improvement. So the judgment that they make in monitoring visits is that they are taking effective action or they are not, and they judged in this instance that they were not taking effective action. I've added the end part because I think it provides balance, and they did also note that there were some things that had improved, and I think that's an important part of this. So I pulled out the governing body has improved the way it oversees the work of the school. They carry out a wide range of activities and they keep pupils safe. So in terms of Ofsted, which we all know about, and this is published in very publicly available form, this is where the schools in West Wyke stand in terms of Ofsted judgments. And the Ofsted judgments incorporate within them everything that we want to know about our schools: safety, well-being and outcomes. Thank you.
Those of you in the room who have a child who's due to start school in September 2019 are amongst the numbers on the board beside me there. This is trying to tell you just a little bit about what's to come in September 2019. So we've gone into the admissions round with the available school places, which are detailed in the same way as before, so it's still 119 places. And the number of first preferences, if you total them up, equates to the number of applications that we've had in the area. So I could say it's the number of children, but it's not necessarily the number of children from the area, because some children from the area can have applied completely out the area, and vice versa. Someone from beyond could have applied within. But the number of first preferences is more the number of children. Adding up the total of the preferences on the end there is sort of a little bit misleading. It's an admissions tool, but it doesn't tell you about the number of kids. And what I can tell you from way too long playing in the world of school admissions is, from that, and because we have under-recruitment across the area, the schools like All Saints and Brightstone and actually Yarmouth and Chalfleet will most likely make offers to all their first preference children. So in the first instance, when I run the process, All Saints will be making 8 offers. And you'll notice that the row that is St Saviour's has more first preferences than there are places there. So from that, there are 6 children who will get allocated elsewhere. It's not necessarily the 6 first preference kids because of the way that the system works in the so-called equal preference system, but based on that, you've got, again, 83 children out of the first preferences, call them children, and 119 places to accommodate them. So if it's if do nothing becomes part of the proposal or the conversation for September 2019, we're going to replicate something that's already in the system, which is about a form of entries worth of surplus places in Year R across the West White schools. We will be offering places in on 16th of April. That's the law. We have to do that. We've entered the published admissions with the processes and round as it was written down, and we will see that out. So there will be offers being made. There's a question that sort of has come to light quite quickly in the whole conversation, which is just around this idea of, are there enough school places for freshwater children? And in the event of an All Saints closure, what would happen there? And if we look at what we've got across the area, then the answer in really simple terms is yes. There are enough school places, except in Year 3. There's this bulge in Year 3 is evident in All Saints and across all the schools. And so it's not that the decision has been decided, it is just, if you look at the numbers, is it possible? And the answer to that question is yes. And then the final point is going to come up in discussion. But if we look at the demand as it exists now, and we look at the demand as it drops in the future, as the data set and the ONS forecasts tell us, by proposing that St Saviour's changes its admission number from 20 to 30, are we identifying and proposing sufficient school places for what is that freshwater demand? And you'll want to tell me no, and I'll be saying based on patterns of parental preference, because that's the numbers of children that I showed in the previous slide were across the whole of the West White. They're living in Yarmouth and Shalfleet and Bryston, as well as in freshwater. And if you account for the preferences that have happened historically, then 30 places at St Saviour's is sufficient. And I'm sure there'll be questions or comments on that point.
In the original report that came out, the council put forward, as it should, a preferred solution. We could have come out and simply sought to consult, which in my view would be ridiculous. So we will always put forward a potential preferred solution. But quite rightly, we'll always stimulate debate, and that's what it's intended to do, and draw feedback through the consultation process, which it's intended to do. It's definitely done that, which is why we're here and is really helpful for me, because I'm the person that will put the report together that goes to council grading at the end of the day. And I want to understand how everyone feels and read how everyone feels about the proposals. So, I mean, you're all aware of those, and some of you will have other recommendations that aren't on there, and we could have made that a much longer list, of course. We could put every permeable option in terms of education in the West One, and we could have picked them off as they wish. But the most important thing is, out of this, that you come back to us with alternate options that we can realistically consider, along with the options that we've put in the report. As Martin said, at the moment, we are faced with a significant surplus. We can't simply run with that surplus. The DfE are expecting us to do something about it. We know there's lots of housing to come along, and we've touched on that, and no doubt we'll talk about it a bit more shortly. That's absolutely fine. But they're the options. I hope I get a lot more options and feedback from everybody, partly tonight, but partly through the system. So if you respond on the electronic system, they're much easier for me to play, which is really helpful. And they will all be reflected upon and read by Councillor Brading and others. Sorry, Mark.
The the title of the slide, and it says there's homeschool transport. There's a current situation, which is 2 school locations in Freshwater, and then the routes to those schools. And we don't know where all of you live, but we know where all the children on roll of the schools right now live, and so the journeys, if you like, the general journeys to school that are going on right now for families in Freshwater whose children attend St Saviour's, and the journeys for all the children who attend All Saints, largely living in Freshwater. So we see that. Obviously, if there was only one school and it was St Saviour's, there would be a totally different school travel plan or travel planning situation there, and you'd have to look at it again, because you'd obviously be talking to a larger number of children all taking the same route with a single destination of that school. So school travel planning would need to be rethought. It's currently the case, and I've said it once or twice or maybe more, that some families are currently choosing not to go to school in Freshwater. So Freshwater families, the children are attending perhaps Yarmouth, perhaps Shalfleet, perhaps Bryston, and when they make that decision, that's parental preference is determined in the school admission system. When that parental preference plays out and they secure a school place elsewhere, then those families take on that home to school transport arrangement for themselves. There's no involvement for the local authority. Going forward, those numbers that I showed you, the reduction to 63 children living in the area, that could, depending upon patterns of parental preference, and assuming a closure of All Saints Primary School and 30 school places at St Saviour's, I know, and I couldn't stand up here and tell you anything different, I know there could be years going forward in which more than 30 families are living in Freshwater with children due to start school in the following September. And depending upon parental preference, if the current pattern of parental preferences wasn't observed and more than 30 families were trying to get into this single form of entry at the remaining school, we could have some children who couldn't access the most local school place at St Saviour's. And if that were to happen, it could result in a home school transport burden for the Isle of Wight Council. We put that into the paper that went into Councillor Brading for requesting for permission to consult, and not seeking to somehow or other obscure that fact in any of the discussion today. Current patterns of parental preference and current numbers in the forecasts say it's unlikely to happen, but it could quite very easily happen through that change in parental preference. I don't think our forecast numbers are that far out. I think it's more implicit within the parental preference patterns that have happened historically, and as I say, that can change. That was the only point on homeschool transport we wanted to raise, but it may be something you comment on or ask us questions on.
So last slide, and then we'll get into the representations and then questions and answers and after facilitators. So this is just the beginning of 10 weeks of consultation. We've got the initial 6 weeks, and subject to a decision then we've got the statutory 4-week period. The council has set out its preferred option. Doesn't mean it can't be a different option. We can't get away from the fact that at the moment we do have a significant number of surplus places forecast in the West Wight. As Martin said, that's the picture across the island, and that is the picture back in Hampshire in some areas. So it's not an uncommon picture. As Natalie has said, we do have concerns about standards, and we need to address those as well. Absolutely, we've got a challenging geography here, because we've got schools that are, Bryston, sat out on a limb, other schools that are relatively rural, and some that are rural fringe, technically, I think, in Freshwater would be the government's description of them. We do need to proactively manage this situation. We can't just pretend it's not there and carry on as if it's not there. It might be, I don't think it's unfair to say at the moment, despite all of you folk, there is not a great support for All Saints in terms of sending your children to the school. And hence why we're partly in this situation now. Martin has run through the emissions and transport impacts, and that would need a lot more work, whatever the solution is and whatever the answer is, but it's ongoing. But most importantly, we've not made a decision. Councillor Brading has not taken a decision yet. And it could be another 8 weeks away before we get to a final decision, and that could be a decision that means we need to start a consultation on a different proposal. Too often in these events, people think we've come out, the decision's been made, and we're just paying lip service. We're absolutely not. Certainly Martin and I have done enough of these to know that often the end solution is not the one you start with. It does change, and it changes because of the feedback and because of the responses to the consultations we get.
Thank you very much. Perfectly still. So I appreciate that. I've got 12 names on this list. I'm not restricted to going through each and every one of these, but I'm going to give everybody on this list an opportunity to say what they want to say. If there's somebody else after we've gone through 12 who would like to say something, and I'm distinguishing between this session as something where you want to comment rather than ask a question. And we'll probably then conclude, as I said, just maybe shortly after 7 o'clock, and then there will be a question and answer session at that point, where you might choose, if there are any questions that remain outstanding, that you get an opportunity to ask any one of the people at the front to clarification or to address some of your questions. Please, you're listening at the moment. If there are any repeats of questions, it would be helpful if we didn't repeat them. I know that from meeting us on the way in, there are 1 or 2 questions that you're delivering on behalf of other people. That's perfectly fine as well. All of this is being recorded by Helen in the corner. The 12, and I'm just going to go for first names as much as possible because it's quite difficult to distinguish the surnames. Mark is first on the list.
Yeah, Mark Jefferson from Unison. I hasten to say I don't live in Freshwater. We do represent support staff at both All Saints and St Saviour's. I did have this presentation delivered to the staff. I attended the staff meeting last week on behalf of them. They were all there. I'd have to say on their behalf, this has been presented as the preferred solution. It's certainly not the preferred solution as far as they're concerned, and it's not the preferred solution as far as the staff at St Saviour's are concerned as well. I don't speak for teaching staff, although I do know that the teachers feel exactly the same way as the support staff. I think there's a real feeling here that there could be a move to a quick decision, which will be a complete disaster, which will completely knock the heart out of the field. West Wye, in terms of the link geography, is not really a West Wye. Those are all very distinct villages, and we've seen 2 schools within a few hundred yards or a mile of here go in the last 7 or 8 years, West Wye Middle, and more recently Tottenham County Primary, which became Weston. And I think there's a real danger about this decision that you're going to lose the diversity of education in the village in terms of, St Saviour's is a great school, but it's a Roman Catholic school. Not everyone wants a Catholic education. I think it's really great that you've got 2 schools here. Concerned that once this kind of consultation exercise starts, it can undermine the situation further because it generates an uncertainty which then leads parents to opt for other schools, and the skids can be under a school before you know it. There's a real danger here and a real worry on behalf of the support staff, many of whom don't live in Freshwater. They could travel many miles to be here because they want to be in this school. They could be employed elsewhere, but they want to be here. They're committed to improving the school. They believe if they're given the adequate support and resources, they can improve, they can take it forward. That's what they want to do. They're concerned about the safety of parents and children in terms of having to walk uphill in pouring rain, in cold weather. saviours really want it. What will be the condition in which children are educated? They don't want to be educated in perhaps 2 temporary classrooms or whatever. They want the proper facility that they've got at the moment retained in this village. They're concerned about the community. A school isn't just about the education of young people. That's mainly what it's about, but it will knock the whole heart out of the whole village. There's a real concern. Into something that is a disaster and is going to wreck this community for generations ahead. I say that it's not just people in Freshwater, it's not just staff in Freshwater. I do go to other schools. There is a real concern about this. We want local education. Things have been messed around enough in recent years on the Isle of Wight. The Hampshire team have come in and actually had to rescue a lot of the education system from the complete mess that was created in terms of reorganisation a few years ago. Don't do this. Build on what you've got. Keep the education in the village. That's the message from the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I appreciate I'm not going to restrict people's the length of time that they speak, but a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes for each of the 12 would be very helpful. So thank you, Mark. You've covered a great deal of ground there. John, you suggested. John?
Thank you very much. I'm John Medland. I'm the local county councillor for Freshwater South. Fantastic speech, but I'm not here to make a speech. I'm here to listen to you, okay? I just wanted to let you know that I completely misunderstand or disagree with the basis of this consultation. All the facts we've been presented with tonight are correct. It's all right, but the whole premise is wrong. We should be looking at the whole 5 schools. All the children in the West Wight. And if you do that, this site is central.
Yes.
I mean, I look forward to hearing your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Christina.
Hi. I am a parent. I had children at this school, and I was also on the government. And about 5 years ago, I did move my children's school. And I think what's wrong here is we're not looking at, you say there's a lack of support, All Saints will be affected with loss of numbers. But when I was the governor, there was no support for school. There was no support for the teachers that were leaving, or the parents that felt that they couldn't keep their children here. The school was failing. It's been allowed to have free requires improvement Ofsted. I personally spoke to parish councillors, Ofsted, nothing, no support. I moved my children out, and I really hoped that I would be able to bring them back here. This is a local school. I live down the road. I would love my youngest, who is 4 this year, to come here, but nobody has dealt with any changes that have happened in this school. They've just left it. And as a governor, I had a parent say to me, are they leaving the leadership team in until the school closes and no one left to turn the lights on as you go? It's wrong. You've left this school to get to this state, and now you're going to close it, and it's wrong. You should have supported this school when it started. With Hampshire support as well. Nobody would help, nobody would listen, and in the end, I put my children first and I left, and I cried that day because this school's been there for years. I came to this school, and you need a school in Freshwater. It's losing its community, and this is the centre of it. And I would be the first, if the leadership changed and the support's there, I would be the first to bring my children back here.
Thank you, Christina. Penny.
I'm not sure that this actually is a representation, but it is in support of the school in that there were positive comments made in the latest Ofsted letter of 30th of July 2018, which we totally ignored.
Yes. You omitted them.
This is towards the end of the letter. The progress that pupils make in Key Stage 1 has significantly improved. This year, by the end of year 2, the proportion of pupils reaching the expected level in reading is in line with the most recent national average. Although the proportion of pupils who achieve the expected level in mathematics and writing remains below the national averages, it is considerably better than in 2017, when no pupils achieved the expected level in these two subjects. New staff have been appointed in the school with good subject knowledge in phonics and mathematics. Their improved practice is evident across the school, with most pupils in Year 1 now achieving the required level in phonics. The teaching of phonics and spelling has been further strengthened by the effective use of additional help for the pupils who need it. As a result, pupils who have special educational needs and or disabilities are making better progress from their starting point. Yes.
Mike?
I'm Mike Appleton. I'm a pastoral worker for the Methodist Church in Freshwater and for West White. And I've been asked to read a letter from one of my congregations who's 88 years old, cannot get here tonight, but has been impassioned that she wants to say something about this school that she has come to love in this area. So with your permission, if I may read her words. Dear Sir, Madam, it has come to notice that you and your colleagues are considering closing All Saints School in Freshwater. With all due respect to you, this, I think, has not been thought through enough. When you consider the children there, they always walk to school, which you encourage. And if they went anywhere else, such as St Saviour's, Totland, it is too far for little ones to walk. Also, there are new houses being built all the time, as for example we see on the site of the former West White Secondary School, all of which have young families which will very soon be school age. This school may be small at present, but in just a few years it will be thriving. The best of this small school is each child gets the care and attention they need. Instead of being put into large classes where at such a young age they can be bewildered and overlooked, as the teachers just cannot be expected to deal with each individual in such a large number. Thank you for your kind attention. Yours sincerely, Helen Mew.
Are you able to make sure we've got a copy? Make sure we've got a copy of that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. We make sure that Helen is captured, Helen's name. Carly.
Hi. So I'm a parent at the school, and hopefully what I'm going to do is represent us as a parent body. So these are the points that I'd like to make as a parent body, and feel free to jump in if I've missed anything, guys. So first of all, can I just say that there's one school in Freshwater, not two. You said there were two schools in Freshwater. There's one school in Freshwater. This is it. We're also a designated rural school, and that has got implications, and I know that it hasn't all been considered in the consultation document. The other thing as parents were angry about is that this is a West White consultation. Why are there only two schools when there are 5 in West White? Is the way that we found this out. We found this out because one of your councillors went to the county press with an article right before half term that left us all in the half term holiday not having any answers, worried, didn't know what was going to go on. It's downright disgusting, but that was done. That can't go on. That is unfair. That is unfair on all our families, not only our families but St Saviour's families as well. That's the second point. Third point. The other point that we'd like to make as parents is that our choice is actually being taken away from us. Now, we've chosen this school for many reasons. What you're offering us is a school that we have chosen, living in this area that we do not want to go to. So, you talk about parental choice. Where's our parental choice? Where's it gone? You're not giving us one. We also feel that you've unfairly, and tonight in fact, have unfairly represented All Saints as a school. The information that you have put in that consultation document is all heavily weighted and negative to All Saints. This is not a failing school, we are an improving school. The next point that we'd like to make is that Councillor Brading himself is the one person making this decision. Councillor Brading lives in Lake, on the other side of the island. The guy has never visited this site. In fact, most of the cabinet have never visited this site. All he's done is look at a piece of paper. He hasn't come and taken into consideration the location of the school, and actually that St Saviour's isn't just our next local school, it's actually quite a far distance away from all of us that live here. We don't think it's fair that one person is making this decision, and actually we feel like we're being picked on as a school. There are issues around the faith element. There are 4 COV schools in this area and 1 Catholic school. They are run differently. Education is done differently there. We know that. We are not happy that you are telling us that we've got to go to a different faith school. What about our faith? What about the reasons that we chose to come here? That needs to be addressed. There are massive issues around the safe route to school. You've said that a risk assessment is going to take place. Why have you not done this before you've proposed this consultation? So it's okay to tell us in July, 3 weeks before the school closes for the summer, that actually we're not going to have a school to come back to, because that's basically what you're going to do if this is the decision. You're going to give us 3 weeks notice that our school closes. So that's another issue. That's not acceptable. Like, why are you telling us 3 weeks before the end of term whether or not we're going to have school? We have now all, as parents, got to go through this for the next few months. Our children are constantly worried that they're going to lose the school that they love. You know, this process is not fair. It hasn't been done fairly. That needs to be taken more into consideration. All Saints is in a site where actually we don't need to touch any main roads. We've got a crossing right outside the school. There are paths that are all over the place that people can use. St Saviour's is on a single track road with no pavement. There are no crossings, and actually to get across the main road to get to St Saviour's for families living on this side, there isn't even a sensible crossing there either. So actually you are putting our children at risk. That we want to make as parents as well is that you are offering us 2 porter cabins on a field. Now, you haven't actually told us how you plan to put these porter cabins in. So are you segregating us as All Saints children in those 2 porter cabins? Or are you actually going to put us into the classrooms with St Saviour's? There's no talk about how you envisage this plan for September working. You've touched on the fact that Year 3 haven't got enough room. Where's that? I've got a child in Year 3 and in reception, so are you telling me that I've got to have one child at a school that I don't want them in and another one somewhere else? It doesn't work. You haven't actually told us how you think this is going to work in the terms of the actual logistics of things and how our children are going to be placed. Porter cabins are not acceptable. You're putting them on a small school site that is already smaller than this site, and you're going to take away their outdoor space. As well as that, you've then got to consider the effects of mental health on children. It's a huge thing. Being, taken from a school that they love, put into another school that they don't want to go to, as well as all the additional journeys that they've got to make, getting them there, and then you're going to educate them in 2 porter cabins. It's not acceptable. Then there's the new homes, you've touched on that. What I found quite interesting is in that slide is that you haven't talked about the 1,000 homes that are proposed for the village in Wellow. 2,000. Sorry, 2,000. So again, you're not giving all the right information out. That isn't fair, that should be all there. So the Wellow School, how do you envisage that's going to work? And actually then the cost implications to us as parents as well. You're giving us the only choice of St Saviour's. So actually as parents, if we don't want our children to go to St Saviour's for different reasons, the only available school with places is Bryston. The other 2 are full. So are you now going to provide transport for our children to go to Brighton? And is that going to come out of your pocket? Because there is, again, has been no information given to us as parents about how it's going to work for us. So how can we understand where you're coming from anymore if you don't give us all the information that we need to be able to make sensible decisions?
Just touching on to what you just said as well. I recently emailed Paul Craden, put my questions towards him, and his last line he said to me in an email is that whatever decision he makes, he is going to be putting the pupils' well-being first. That is not putting the pupils first at all.
Carly, thank you for that, and you did a really good job in delivering those. So they were heard loud and clear, especially by me, this distance here. When we come to some questions and answers, I dare say, there's lots of questions in there. I would encourage you to choose maybe 2 or 3 of the key ones. Doesn't mean to say the others are less important, but please make good use. I know you probably have in terms of email. Please make good use of the consultation process, either by writing them down, and sharing them, or by putting them, as Richard said earlier, on the consultation website.
Okay, thank you.
We'll come back to you in a moment, Carl. Rachel.
Mine was actually in case Carly had any extra time, but I think she covered and did a brilliant job in representing all of us.
Yes,
I'm here.
Hi.
I'm feeding a baby, so I can't stand up.
Shall I come back to you?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Again, I was there really to support Carly and anything that sort of didn't come up. But I would like to say that I'm interested in the statistics that have been used to justify the preferred option. They're a work of fiction, as is anything that attempts to predict what's going to happen over the next 3 to 7 years. It's just completely ridiculous. Yeah. There's no way that any of us know what's going to be happening in 3 to 7 years' time here, let alone any of you. So you've decided how many children are going to be born here then. You've decided how many people are going to stay on the island. You've decided how many people are going to move into the new houses and how many of them are going to use the local schools, even in the face of Brexit. If I watch the news at the moment, nobody in Parliament seems to know what's going to be happening over the next few weeks. So your foresight into the next few years is quite nice. I believe that an application was actually made to reduce the PAN at All Saints to 15. Why has that request been put on the back burner while you're using a figure of 30 instead to justify the surplus places that you're I think we all acknowledge that standards at the school might not be as good as they could be or where we would ideally like them to be. Somebody not that far from me gave me an amazing quote the other day. They said, when you have a headache, you don't shoot yourself in the head. So why are we not taking a paracetamol here? Why aren't we dealing with this leadership issue that you have raised by support, by consultation, and failing that by management? Is it just easier to close the school than to manage this situation effectively or to offer the help that's so clearly needed? You finally have set out that this is your preferred option, having done very little research, it would seem. I'd be interested to know what options were considered prior to this point and discounted, and why, because I'm sure as a group we can come up with plenty of alternative options for you to consider. So watch this space, because they will be coming over the next few weeks. Yeah.
Thank you, Becky. Ali.
Yes. Carly's done an excellent job as a
parent body. I myself have a child that's in year 3, the problem year 3, that unfortunately we obviously all consulted our watch list and decided to have children at the same time. My concern mainly is that there is a real lack of actual plans. I don't even have I know we've talked about porta cabins, but I don't know where that's come from. I've yet to see any kind of firm details or plans. So I find it very difficult to understand a proposal that isn't actually laying out for me how this is going to work. Where are these children going? Common sense for people who are living in the area would say that truly All Saints is the only school in the area that's got the capacity, one, to deal with that number of children, and also has the capacity to deal with any extra people should they come along, or should we start a growth spurt in the next few years. It's the only site that's got the ability to expand.
Yeah.
And I find it very, very difficult to believe when we're presented with statistics about what's going to happen in the next few years, why that hasn't been taken into consideration. And I think that is where, for me, it's very, very hard, despite your reassurances, that there isn't an underlying problem here, or an idea that perhaps this has been decided, or there is a plan for this site that we don't know about.
Yes.
And raises my suspicions greatly, because all of the options pinpoint All Saints as being the school that should close, and common sense to me would say it's the least school that should close. I do think we do need to look forward and take into account that things can't stay the same, and I don't think they can stay the same. We do need help. We do need to work out what has caused people to leave. We do need to get people back. We do need to make All Saints the school of choice. But actually, we need the support from the education department to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what I would ask for in this whole consultation, is just some more help, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Anna. I think this is CAF. Forgive me if I've misread. Is this CAF or... It was actually, if asked, in brackets after.
Oh, that was me then, as Chair of Governors. So I didn't come here to do a presentation tonight. The consultation continues with all our key stakeholders, but there are a couple of things I would like to say. Those who know me well won't be surprised about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the first thing to say is that the governing body, as a governing body, are developing a direction of travel and a considered opinion, which we will continue to refine and work on all the way up to the middle of April, when we have perfected our response and it's ready to go in and be heard. But there are three things that I would like to say. The first thing is that the governing body's absolute priority is to get the best option for local children and families, the children and families who are at the school now and the children and families who will be coming to school in the future. And importantly and crucially, it's absolutely essential to get this right for the community of Freshwater.
Yes.
That has to come first. This is the largest village in West White. Indeed, I understand it's the largest village on the island, and until recently, the largest village in the United Kingdom. I learned that one this morning. It seems inconceivable that there isn't a school here. It's been identified in the island plan as a key secondary hub for the area, a secondary settlement. There is development in housing,
We appreciate that, but there's also developments in employment opportunities
Yes.
and in the high street offer, and these things are really important. This site is fabulous. It's close to all the amenities it needs to be close to. The library, the health centre, the sports centre, the country park, the shops. But more importantly, it's the closest to where children and families live. These children and families, 95% of whom walk, scoot or cycle to this site. The second thing we wanted to say is that as a governing body, we do accept the statistics. We can see that there are surplus places. We aren't going to argue with those facts. It's very clear to us, we are convinced by the forecast data that's presented in the report. We have to understand the demographical issues here. But what we do feel very strongly about, and I will finish in just a moment, that far too much emphasis in this ill-written report has been placed on the notion of this being a failing school. Far too much. So let me just, again, Natalie's tried to partially rebalance. Our consultation response will do much to redress to redress the balance and to demonstrate that this school is not failing. Two things very quickly. We've heard about Key Stage 1. Let's talk about Key Stage 2 data from 2018. Over the last 3 years, we have seen an improvement from 35% to 40% to 50% of children achieving age-related expectations. That will be even better at the end of this year. Now that sits just below the island average of 54% and clearly below national of 64%. But if you compare the improvement of 10% at this school with island schools as a whole, which went down 1%, I'm sorry, but that does not look like failure to me.
Absolutely.
Final point for now. There will be more in our response. My final point is to look at the DFE data on where we are in terms of overall performance. This school came second out of the 5 West White schools. And 9th out of 44 schools in the island.
Yes!
It is.
Thank you, Councillor. The 11th, and I know there probably will be one